Hello, it's me again, Mr. Carly, fighting Batman. I am. I have been thinking today. There are some of my mom's friends who are just so up their own butts about politics and believing that, Donald Trump is awesome and Obama was just the worst, and without getting into personal politics. As a matter of fact, I'm not going to be talking about politics today. I'm going to be talking about the dehumanization that comes from the modern version of politics. That's not to say that politics used to be cleaner. It didn't. People used to be assassinated. People used to, threaten to have their families threatened. People used to get killed. People used to, bribe people. All that sort of stuff has been happening forever. The real problem is that now we have gotten to the point, partially because of the internet, and partially just because this is something we have built to, with the brinksmanship of the Cold War and with everything from, I guess, it really mostly started with, I think, communism and World War II, when we started dehumanizing our enemies. I guess technically we can take it further back than that. To really understand this, you really have to go back to a old religion called Zoroastrianism. Zoroastrianism is very, very important for the purpose of political alliance. Zoroastrianism was the first religion that we're aware of that survived long enough for us to know this, and technically survives today. But Zoroastrianism is the first religion that said, because my God is good, every god that opposes it is evil and must be derived from that evil. So it was the first one that said, instead of my God likes farming, your God likes burning farms, we're enemies. My God likes water, your God likes fire, we're enemies. My God likes smithing, your God likes growing things, we maybe could get along, but mostly we're enemies. That was most religions up to Zoroastrianism. There were gods that were leaned towards good, and there were gods that leaned towards bad, but they argued and they disagreed and they fought. And yeah, you could say my God is good and your God is bad, but it wasn't good and evil. So Zoroastrianism was the first one that introduced us to a precept that would carry into many of the religions that followed it, including Judaism, Islam, Christianity, all those things. So, very, very important, groundbreaking set of things. The problem is that now, and it's gotten much, much worse since the internet, because of the polarization principles involved and the Godwin's Law and all that sort of stuff, where the enemy is not human. They are monstrous. They are zombies. They are craven wolves. They are locusts. They are not people. And that leads me to the word of this particular YouTube video. The word is Sonder. Sonder, Sonder. And what a Sonder is when you have the realization, and many of you may not have had it yet, when you have the realization that every single person in your life, whether they are just somebody you see on the train, or whether they are somebody that you know from your work or your school, it's the realization that they have as much going on in their head as you do in yours. It's the realization that everybody has a vital and inner life that you will never know. That you are just a character in their book. And it's the idea that because their life is completely theirs, that they probably don't understand how much is going on in your head either. And the idea that every single person has this rich existence that, they think all the time. They never stop thinking when they're awake. There's never a void there. We tend to see people as what they present and as two-dimensional beings when everybody is three-dimensional. But the problem is that there are a lot of people who it's way easier for them to simply say, those aren't people. They are driven by base hungers. They're zombies. Or they don't believe the same as I do about abortion or prison labor or birth control or whatever. And therefore, they are not worthy of life. They should be dead because their beliefs are different than mine. So those people completely miss out on the Sonder and assume that because they assume that there is no reason for these feelings. They assume that it's purely because they haven't thought it through. And I'm guilty of this myself. I have done this many times. I'm still doing this now. The real purpose of this YouTube, for all the things that it has become and all the things that it is for me to fight the things that are wrong in my brain. It's to challenge myself and to challenge my preconceived notions and to challenge all the stuff that I built up while I was in America to protect me. And it's to fight that Batman. It's to bring that Batman down. And Batman is really strong. And so it's really hard for me to realize that there are people who genuinely believe that long before there's a brain, a clump of cells is a person. And to end that clump of cells' existence is to end a life. There are people who believe that, and it's hard for me to understand. There are people who don't think about the fact that all food comes from suffering. Everything we consume to stay alive probably suffers in some fashion. And it may be in a way that we don't understand, but it does. There are people who've never thought about that, who never think about the fact that our existence is predicated on the consumption of others. Just kind of how it works. And there are people that just don't think about this stuff. But to assume that they have no reason to believe that, to assume that all their things are based on an antiquated book or based on singular experiences or based on privilege or based on things that I've experienced, to assume that they are completely incorrect and that they haven't thought it through. Now, don't get me wrong. I can generalize a little bit, and a lot of them have not thought it through. A lot of them are just saying something that they heard their parent or their grandparent or their friend or that guy that seemed smart at the gas station or whatever. And that's on both sides. Now, it's a little less so on the side of people who went to college and who learned how to identify sources and who learned how to check for bias. A little less. But both sides have their parrots. They're people that hear something and then repeat it. And then hear it again and then repeat it. And then they hear something that contradicts that and they don't think that could possibly be true even if it's better sourced. That happens. But though there are some people who genuinely do have a legitimate reason not to believe a thing. They genuinely do have a legitimate reason to not want to vaccinate or to not want to trust the government, or they might even, and I have trouble imagining this one, they might even genuinely believe that former President Obama was a Kenyan Muslim. They might have a reason to believe that. It's probably not a good one, but they might have one. The problem is that we have to acknowledge that other people have existence. Everybody else has thoughts, and nobody is boring. Well, that's not true. Some people are boring. Nobody doesn't have a rich inner existence. Nobody doesn't have dreams, hopes, aspirations, things going on. Nobody is just a background character. Nobody. And having that realization, and it may happen for you now, or it may kick in 5 years, 10 years, and you'll go, what was that thing? Oh, yeah. Or maybe you'll come across the word Sonder in your 20s and you'll go, oh, yeah, I know what that is now. But for the most part, and this, I don't know if this is a real word. I think if we use it enough, it becomes a real word. But the idea that other people have thought about this, have thought about things. And don't get me wrong, it's another one of those things where most of the arguments that I win, it's because I've thought about it and they haven't. And I win a lot of arguments. So recognizing that my thought process might be a little better doesn't mean that I'm always right. It just means that I'm a little more Batman. And so this is kind of how we do it. This is what we do. This is what we say. But we need to acknowledge that everybody has reasons. And again, their reasons may not be good ones. Their reasons may be stupid or backward or based on what Billy Joe said at the convenience store or whatever. But they do have them. And it's not their fault if they don't understand everything. And that's why, just like with teaching, just like with anything, just like with training an animal, you have to have infinite patience. You have to keep trying, because if you can get them to acknowledge that you're human and not a faceless, mindless, here to destroy the world enemy, then you can have a genuine understanding. You can have a back and forth. And that's why you have to, even when somebody says something that's genuinely offensive to you, and I've had students, and I've had parents, and I've had friends, and I would say I've had all of those things in the last month who have said something that was genuinely just like, not like, oh, we have differing opinions on Game of Thrones, but, oh, if I heard you say that and I didn't know you, I would assume you were subhuman scum. I would assume that you voted for Nazis. That's the kind of stuff that I've heard. But that doesn't mean that those aren't people, and it doesn't mean that they're not worthy of saving. And that's why, over the long term, sometimes I might have these arguments where I talk to somebody for weeks, and it feels like nothing is changing. But you just got to be the water. The water will wear down the stone given time. So that's it. Today's word, again, Sonder. And realize that each person has a deep inner life. I hope that works for you. I hope you learned something. I hope you have a good weekend. Beep boop.